I hope you remember to spring forward. Losing an hour doesn't seem like a lot for adults, but for your children, it could make for a long night, not just for them, but for you as a parent. Sleep expert Ingrid Pruer joins us with tips on how to help your babies and children adjust to their new schedule. Welcome, Ingrid.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
And you're a pro. You have 2 little kids yourself.
I do, 6 and 9.
Oh, my goodness. All right. So, I mean, how big an issue is it, this daylight saving time when it comes to kids' sleeping patterns?
It's not as big as of an issue, but parents freak out. They just don't know what to do. It is important, though, that we do pay attention to it and make sure that we keep things on track the week before and the week after.
All right. So the week before we already had.
Yes.
So what can we do now that the clock has changed the week after to help our kids adjust?
I would say, first, it takes about 3 to 5 days for a child to adjust, just like we do to the time change. If you feel that they're struggling significantly, base the sleep schedule on the new clock. Don't keep thinking about the old clock.
Okay.
But if you see that your child is struggling, don't put them down earlier than half hour than their typical sleep time.
Okay, so the sleep time, right,
was 7 o'clock is now 7 o'clock. Don't put them down earlier than 6:30 because that will throw their biological rhythm off completely.
All right, and we're talking all ages, right? From infant to us.
Yes.
About how daylight saving time really does affect us.
It can affect us. One, mindset, right? It's like, oh no, the clock is changing. Now we have this hour difference. But we want to make sure that it doesn't affect us so much, and that is a result of what we're doing the week prior and the week after. Try not to get off your sleep schedule the week after. It is super important. Make sure that you are taking the time to make sleep a priority. Now,
how much does light exposure affect sleep? Because I know my daughter was so excited. Oh my gosh, the days are longer, the sun's going to be out. How much does that affect it, and what do you need to do inside the home to kind of adjust? Right.
So it is important. Like daytime, we are fueled by the sun and the moon. Our biological rhythms are fueled by the sun and the moon. So it is important that right now, as we know that we need to go to sleep an hour later, that we are exposed to more light during the day and even up to 2 to 2.5 hours prior to sleep time. That doesn't mean we shouldn't start dimming the lights about an hour before bed, right? Because that starts increasing the melatonin in the body that we need in order to get to that restful sleep.
All right, how important is it, I know all the parents are wondering, to set a bedtime and really stick to it for kids?
It's extremely important. Now, when they're extremely young, when they're anywhere under a year old, their bedtime really should vary on the quality of the naps that they're having. If we're talking about an older child, we want to stay with the typical sleep time that they're used to. Half an hour earlier, the most, and getting them down. But you want them not to end up with a sleep deficit.
Right.
We are already losing an hour. We don't need to lose more.
And you were saying around, my daughter's 13, and things go crazy at 13.
Yes, once they hit the teenage years, what we've started noticing is that their bedtime starts creeping later as opposed to earlier. And it's really hard as parents because you hear and you read so much about, well, it's really important to get your kids in by 9 o'clock. They need X amount of hours of sleep, but they are biologically wired. Teenagers are biologically wired a little different, where they are starting, their bodies are producing less melatonin, needing them to go to sleep a little later, but they also need to sleep in.
Okay. So they just push everything forward.
Everything gets pushed forward. What you do want to do is make sure that you're not allowing electronics in their bedroom.
That's the tough part.
That will keep them up later.
Ingrid, thank you so much. I really appreciate all your great advice. We'll be right back.